Tonight, the media wants you focused on one headline phrase: the women's team declined Trump's invitation. But if you're watching the Grant Caldwell Report, we're going past the headline and into what actually happened. Because the facts tell a very different story. President Trump invited America's Olympic hockey champions into the spotlight after an incredible U.S. run, and now the usual outlets are trying to spin a scheduling conflict into a political scandal. That's the play. That's the frame. And tonight we're not falling for it. If you support this channel and you want coverage that actually reads the details instead of just recycling outrage, hit subscribe right now and drop a comment, because this is exactly the kind of story where the framing matters more than the headline. Here's what's confirmed. The gold medal-winning U.S. women's hockey team declined an invitation to President Trump's State of the Union and cited scheduling conflicts and previously scheduled academic and professional commitments. That is the official explanation. Not political protest, not snub, not boycott, scheduling and commitments. And that distinction matters because once you remove the fake drama, what you're left with is something simple: a president publicly recognizing American champions. Now stay with me because the next part is where the media narrative starts to wobble. And it's the part Trump supporters are going to understand immediately. The invitation didn't happen in a vacuum. It came after Team USA's men's hockey team won gold, and President Trump called them while they were celebrating in the locker room. During that call, Trump talked about getting them to Washington for the State of the Union, and even floated sending a military plane. The players were fired up. You could hear the energy. You could hear the celebration. This was a victory moment, not some stiff political photo op. Then came the line that got clipped, reposted, and spun all over social media. Trump said they'd have to bring the women's team too, and he joked that he'd probably be impeached if he didn't invite them as well. The players laughed. It was clearly delivered as a joke in the middle of a celebratory call, not an insult, not a dismissal, not a policy statement. And this is where a lot of the coverage gets slippery. They isolate the joke, remove the tone, remove the locker room context, remove the fact that he was literally talking about bringing both champion teams to Washington, and then they sell outrage. That's not journalism. That's clipping for reaction. If you've watched politics long enough, you already know the pattern. Trump makes a joking line in a high-energy moment, and instead of covering the full context, critics race to manufacture a controversy. But the full context is the story, and the full context gets even stronger in the next section, because there's a detail a lot of people missed that undercuts the Trump snubbed the women narrative completely. Here's the detail that blows up the fake framing. Reporting confirmed that both teams were formally invited to the State of the Union. Let me say that again, because this is the part people need to hear clearly. Both the men's and women's hockey teams were invited, not just mentioned in a joke. Formally invited. That matters because some of the online outrage made it sound like the women were an afterthought or some last-minute add-on. But when you actually read the reporting, the women's team spokesperson confirmed both teams were invited by the administration. And what did the women's side say? They were grateful for the invitation, appreciated the recognition, and couldn't attend because of timing and prior commitments. That is not a hostile statement. That is not a political broadside. That is a professional, respectful response. In other words, this looks a lot more like normal logistics after the Olympics than some anti-Trump protest story. And honestly, that makes sense. These athletes are coming off an Olympic schedule, travel, media, family, pro obligations, and for some players, academic responsibilities. This is not a random week in July where everyone is free. The point is simple. Trump recognized American champions. The team thanked him and cited scheduling. End of story. Unless your goal is to force a political fight where one may not actually exist. And if that sounds familiar, it should, because this next part is where the broader media angle comes in, and it's exactly why Republican viewers are sick of how stories like this get packaged. What you're seeing here is the collision of sports, politics, and media incentives. The women's team just won Olympic gold over Canada in overtime. The men's team also beat Canada 2-1 in overtime for gold. That should be a huge all-American sports celebration moment, and in a normal country, that would be the center of the coverage. Instead, the oxygen gets sucked into a political controversy cycle built around one joke, and a decline that, by the team's own statement, was based on scheduling conflicts. Why? Because outrage travels faster than context. And look at the timing. The women's team's statement points to academic and professional commitments after the games, and reporting also notes the PWHL resumes this week and the NHL resumes this week. That means these athletes and teams are transitioning fast. This isn't Fantasyland scheduling. This is real-world athlete logistics. So from a pro-Trump perspective, the strongest read here is not, Trump got rejected. The strongest read is this. Trump moved quickly to honor winning American teams, treated the moment like a big national celebration, and the women's team responded respectfully, but couldn't make it due to timing. That's a recognition story. That's a patriotic story. And yes, it's also a media framing story, because some outlets will always prefer snub over scheduling when Trump is in the headline. If you're watching this and you're tired of that exact formula, drop a comment right now and tell me. Do you see this as a real controversy or another media overreach? Because the final section is where we land this cleanly, and I want to give you a closing frame your audience can rally behind without sounding reckless or unfair. Here's the bottom line for the Grant Caldwell Report. President Trump invited America's hockey champions to one of the biggest political stages in the country. He did it in a celebratory moment after a gold medal win. He joked in classic Trump fashion. Both teams were invited. The women's team declined respectfully and cited scheduling commitments. That's the fact pattern. So if you're coming at this from a Republican pro-Trump angle, the message is not attack the women's team. That misses the point and weakens the argument. The stronger message, the smarter message, is this. Trump recognized excellence. Trump put American winners on center stage. And the official reason for the women not attending was logistics, not some proven political protest. That keeps you factual. That keeps you credible. And that puts the media spin machine on defense. Also, don't miss the symbolism here. Both U.S. teams beat Canada for gold in overtime. This was an all-time patriotic sports moment, and Trump's instinct was to celebrate it publicly and bring those winners into the national spotlight. That's exactly what a lot of his supporters want to see from a president. So let the pundits chase clips. We're going to stick to the full story. If you want more coverage like this, pro-America, pro-Trump, but grounded in what's actually confirmed, subscribe to the Grant Caldwell Report right now. And in the comments, answer this. Was this a real snub, or did the media try to turn a scheduling conflict into a Trump controversy? I want to hear from the people who actually read past the headline.